My bad, my bad. So I wasn't able to click the uh, mic. Anyway, so again, I encourage everybody to open your camera so I can see your reaction. All right, so going back here, I just realized on why we have 1.3 volts right here. So I remember that this one is a AC voltage, right? And this one is a DC voltage. So this one is consistent 2 volts, and then this one is, it will start from 0 up to 5. Okay, and let's go back with this positive half cycle on why is it a 1.3 and it's not a negative 1.3. Okay, so during the VI is let's say less than our VB. So the formula in here will be VB minus BD. Oops. Okay, so that is our VO. So VO is equal to VB minus VD. So how did this happen? So if you guys are going to take a look in this one during the 0 okay, voltage, so we have a higher VB. Okay. So of course, magkakaroon ulit tayo ng another scenario doon wherein VB is greater than VI. So if that is the case, VB is greater than VI. Wait a second. VI is less than VB, which is VO is equal to VB minus VD. Tama. And then VB is greater than VI or the voltage input. VO, magiging reading natin is the same. We have VB minus VD also. Kasi ang flow of current natin is this one. And it will become a forward bias. Okay. Anyway, so ito lang yung isa lang yung para maging assumption natin dito. So I think same yung result even though VI is less than VB or VB is greater than VI. But if you guys are going to take a look on this one, so at point 0 and then 1 while VI is less than VB, so this will become a forward bias by our VB kasi yung voltage natin dito is tinutulak from here to there. Tama? And ito, parang another voltage source lang siya. And then at that part, so meron tayong voltage. Though for now, we don't know that one yet. But once this one is now equal to this VB, let's say 2 volts is equal to 2 volts. So ang mangyari nito is parang magiging manu-neutralize or at point, let's say 2.1, okay, magiging reverse bias na to. Okay. And as a result, so meron ng parang collision dito and then this one now will become a reverse bias. So eto, ang magdi-decide na kung forward bias ba siya or reverse bias, okay, is the VI itself. Okay. So at exactly 2 volts, okay, natigil yung parang pagka-forward bias natin wherein we have a complete flow of current of 2 volts. And then magiging reverse bias na siya kapag let's say naging 2.1 na yung VI natin. So let's say 2.1 or exactly 2 volts. Okay. At that point, since naging reverse bias na siya. And then again, if it's a reverse bias, so magiging open circuit na siya. And then since hindi siya ideal, wherein it's non-ideal of course. So meron siyang negative and then positive voltage source of 0.7. Okay? And at this point, hindi makadaloy yung V1 natin since nga reverse bias siya. And at this point, ang meron na lang tayong voltage is the VB and then this voltage source. Okay. And if we are going to follow this one, since ito yung parang at this point, okay, reverse bias siya. Ang magiging flow of current natin, so ganun pa rin, dadaloy siya dito, pero babalik siya dito sa R1 and then VO natin since open circuit na nga to. Okay. And if you guys are going to take a look on this one, we have positive 0.7. Okay, at this point, positive 0.7. And this one is negative 2. Oops. Dapat 1.3 tayo, di ba? Okay, may bad. So, yun din pala kung bakit ako nagkakamali. Kasi at this point, positive 2 volts siya. Kasi yun yung reading natin kanina. Okay, so naging forward bias siya at positive 2. And then kapag tinulak niya na tong diode na to, kakainin niya yung 0.7. Okay, wherein this one make it as a forward bias at this certain point. Okay. So, alam na natin na it's 2 minus 0.7. So, babalik siya dito as 2 minus 0.7. Okay. Though, medyo complicated siya kasi parang, yun nga, by scenario siya. Wherein mag-uumpisa kayo sa 0 and then ano ba yung reading? Okay. Ano ba yung magiging parang initial assumption nyo? So, is it 2 volts only or is it 5 volts? And so on and so forth. But yeah, going back here, so it's 2 and then minus 0.7 since at that point, it's in a forward bias. And then beyond that, 3 volts, 4 volts, and then 5 volts, it's now in a reverse bias. Okay, wherein, yun na yun, babalik na yung reading natin dito sa voltage output. Okay. Yes. So, applicable lagi naman ganito. Okay. So, hindi naman ako nagbigay ng, let's say, masyadong complicated or ibang-ibang circuit. Laging dikit sa example ko yung mga binibigay kong activities. Okay. Or sa mga exam nyo. So, even your exam is super easy. Okay. Anyway, so that is why we have here a reading of positive 1.3. So, 2 minus 0.7 is equal to 1.3. Okay. Kasi, kailangan niya munang itulak to as a forward bias. Okay. And then, babalik siya dito as a, 2 minus 0.7. Okay. Hindi yung assumption natin kanina na replace ko lang ulit to na completely ganun lang siya. Okay. Kasi ang reading talaga nito, this will become 0.7 and then this will become a negative 2. So it will become negative 1.3. So this VB right here should make this one is, as a forward bias para meron tayong complete loop of circuit. So kapag meron tayong complete loop, of course, there's a flow of current. And then natigil lang to kapag naging 3 volts na to. Okay, or kapag mas mataas na mismo tong voltage input natin. And then this one now became a reverse bias. Okay, so as a result, open circuit na to, 0.7 na lang natira, and then it will flow back right here. Okay, so parang ganun yung naging nangyari. So it's 2 minus 0.7 of this silicon diode. Alright, so I hope I was able to persuade you guys on why this one is positive 1.3 and it's not negative 1.3. Okay. So, yun lang yung kulang. Wala kasi akong mapakitang simulator. Okay. So, mas maganda sana na makita nyo like at this point, ang reading niya is ganito lang kasi 0 pa lang yung voltage, 1 volt pa lang yung voltage, and then 2 volts na tigil na and so on and so forth. Okay. So, I highly encourage you guys to, where is that one? To watch some of the videos, especially this one, the last one, itong lectures by Shri Darshan K. So, I think Indian to, hindi ko lang maalala. But yeah, ito yung isa sa mga pinakamaganda. Though lahat naman sila maganda. Okay. Pero ito yung parang may mga step-by-step na solution. Like at this point, ito lang siya. And then at that point, yun na yung naging result ng voltage output. Okay? So yeah, I included 5 YouTube links where you can watch all of them, of course, to understand more what is this paper. Okay? Especially dito sa mga bias voltage natin. Okay? Well, anyway, so that is the solution for the VB minus VB. Okay, 2 minus 0.7, which is equal to 1.3 volts. Right? So any questions so far regarding with this example number 4, positive half cycle? All right. So for the negative half cycle, so this one is very straightforward. So I think there is no problem regarding with this one. So during the negative half cycle, so we have negative connected to negative and then positive connected to positive. Okay, and the same then. So forward bias siya and then forward bias din siya. Okay, with this VB. So wala nang confusion. So as a result, this is a closed circuit. Okay, so there is no time that this will become a reverse bias, and then there is no time that it will become a forward bias. So it's consistently a closed circuit or a forward bias. So we have here a non-ideal, so we just have to put here the voltage source, okay, or the voltage threshold of that diode. So we have here 0.7. And in here, the deciding factor of your flow of current will be, of course, the higher the voltage, okay, that is the one that will dominate the entire flow of circuit. So in here we have VI is greater than VB. So in here we have VI is greater than VB. So where in VO is equal to, so actually lahat ko consider nyo, it's equal to VI plus VB plus VB. Okay, so as a result, VO is equal to, so you just simply have to follow the sign itself. So it's, this one is -5 and this one is positive 0.7 and this one is -2. So at this point, okay, kapag pinagsama-sama nyo lahat, okay, -5 plus 0.7 is equal to -4.3 minus 2 is -6.3. So at this point, -6.3 yung naging result natin. So that's the reading for our VO after passing through this entire path right here. So that is why we have -6.3 volts in here. Okay. So are we clear with negative half cycle? Okay. So in here, as you guys can see, from the voltage input of 5, so nadagdagan siya, it became -6.3. That's because of a bias voltage. Okay, so pwedeng ganun. So parang na-amplify siya kung tutuusin kasi nadagdag pa mismo yung bias voltage natin dito. Anyway, so that's it for the series positive clipper with positive bias. Let's now proceed to series positive clipper with negative bias. Okay, so in here we have the scenarios for positive and then the scenarios for negative half cycle. So positive half cycle, so positive is connected to negative and then negative is connected to positive. So as a result, we have a zero flow of current. Well, magkakaroon din tayo ng voltage if this bias voltage has a voltage itself. So again, hindi ito yung pinaka-exact formula lalo na kapag may bias voltage tayo. So hindi lang siya 0 volts. So for the negative half cycle, so negative is connected to negative and then positive is connected to positive. So in here, we have to consider the VI. So the same, VI, the VB, and then the BB. Just add everything, okay, with the signage, okay? So without further ado, let's have an example para mas maintindihan nyo. So series positive clipper with negative bias, ideal for now. So in here, we have positive to negative, negative to positive. Okay. So as a result, this will become a reverse bias. And at this point, if you guys are going to take a look at this one, reverse bias siya dito sa BI natin. And negative is connected to the positive, and then positive is connected to the negative. So all throughout, reverse bias yung ideal diode natin. So ang nangyari niyan, oops, di ko pa na copy. So what, oops, wait a second. All right. So what happened here is, let's say the first scenario is, let's say VI is greater than VB. Okay. So we have here just a flow of current and it's reverse bias since positive is connected to negative and then negative to positive. And then at the same time, mapa VI is greater than VB or VB is greater than VI, vice versa. So kahit balik-balik na rin yun. So negative is connected to positive and then positive is connected to negative. So this one is in a reverse bias also. So all throughout, this one is an open circuit. Tama? So kapag reverse bias, of course, there is no flow of current wherein resulting into a 0 volts. Okay? So saka lang siya magkakaroon ng flow of current if this one, we're able to make this one is a forward bias. Okay, so yun yung difference nung kanina, ng example natin. So ito, negative to positive and then positive to negative. Alright? So are we clear on how did we get this VO right here for the positive half cycle? Okay, so I hope the others were able to get this one also. And then during the negative half cycle, so in here, ito parang neglected pa rin to. Okay, or, ay, sorry, meron na pala. Okay, since ang reading naman pala natin is at this point. Anyway, so if you guys are going to take a look at this one, negative is connected to negative and then positive is connected to the positive. So we now have a forward bias, okay, at this called one diode. And as you guys can see, we now have a current that is flowing in here. So we have here -5 and then +0 since this one is ideal. And then we have here +2. Okay, so i-consider nyo lang yung signage niya. So para hindi kayo malito, gawin nyo na lang yung ginagawa ko, yung nasa dulo. Okay, and then I always go for a clockwise, okay, a flow of current. So in here, -5 plus 0 plus 2 is equal to -3 volts. Okay, so I think wala nang twist dito since all throughout, you know, this one is higher. Okay, well, there is a point that, even though, okay, kasi reverse bias din pala. Okay, so all throughout, ang magiging forward bias value lang natin is this VI right here. Okay, so it won't affect this one, even though this one is -1, -2, or -3, and so on and so forth. So we only have here -3 volts. So 0 and then -3. So from 5, we now only have -3 volts. So nabawasan siya. So may mga ganun ding scenario. Okay, so are we clear? So parang na-clip entirely yung positive half cycle and then some part of the negative half cycle were also clipped, okay, which is maging -3 lang. So are we clear with example number 5, negative half cycle?
Yes, sir.
All right. So again, if ever that you have a question, so just let me know. And then we have another example right here for the number 6, wherein same lang din pero it's non-ideal. Okay? So even though this one is non-ideal, so ganun pa rin, reverse bias siya sa VI natin, and then it's also reverse bias in our bias voltage. So wala pa rin tayong flow of current, so that's why we still have 0 volts in here. Okay? So walang nagbago. And then during the negative up cycle, so same formula, it's just that we now have to consider the diode itself. Okay, so it's now -5 plus 0.7 and then plus 2. Okay, so when it comes to the signage of your diode, so again, just consider the signage of this diode. So we have negative and then positive. And then we're considering the outer signage, so that is why we have positive 0.7. So if you're going to calculate this one, we'll get negative 2.3 volts. So are we clear with example number 6? Are you able to get this one, Mr. Eisel?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Miss Grace, Mr. Mark?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. All right, so let's move on to series negative clipper. So ito, lahat ng example natin kanina is similar with positive clipper. It's just that in here, yung negative side naman yung i-clip natin. Okay? So, kabaliktaran lang nung positive clipper natin kanina. Okay, so in here, of course, we have this voltage output. So lahat ng nasa negative side natin was clipped. And then we still have some pwedeng buo pa rin or nadagdagan yung positive side or pwedeng nabawasan yung positive side natin. But in here, it's completely clipping your negative side. Okay. So of course, in order for you or for us to have a series negative clipper, so dapat ang inaalaw mo na flow of current dito is positive only. Okay, so positive to positive and then negative to negative. Okay, so with that, we can have a series negative clipper. So again, these are the scenarios. So during the positive half cycle, okay, so we have this result, so VI minus VD. So we have a reading for the positive half cycle, but when it comes to a negative half cycle, it's completely 0. So you will see later on why we have 0. So let's have this example number 7. So positive is connected to the positive, and then negative is connected to the negative. So as you guys can see, it's very obvious. So magkakaroon tayo ng close circuit dito, and then it's ideal. So close path lang siya. There is no voltage threshold. So kung ano yung lumabas dito, ayun na yun. Okay, so it's 5 volts. So, or let's say VO is equal to VI. Okay. So are we clear with positive half cycle? Okay, so this one is super simple anyway. And then during the negative half cycle, so negative is connected to positive, and then positive is connected to negative. So we have a reverse bias. So with that, magkakaroon tayo ng open circuit, so walang flow of current. So that is why we have 0 volts in here. Okay, so I hope this one is super clear. And let's now move on to example number 8, where it's now non-ideal. So meron na tayong voltage threshold. So in here, 5 minus 0.7, okay, is now equal to 4.3 volts. I think it's super easy since parang half-wave rectifier lang again to. But again, yun, yung negative side naman yung wala. Okay? And then during the negative half cycle, so negative is connected to positive, and then positive is connected to negative. So this will form a reverse bias. So that is why we have a reading of 0 volts. So are we clear with this part? Okay, so just let me
Yes,
know if
sir.
you have a question. So let's now move on to series negative clipper with bias. Okay, so meron na tong let's say positive bias or negative bias. So again, I won't be reading this one since same lang din naman yung parang explanation doon before. But in here, just ito lang siguro yung babasahin ko na. Clipping take place during the negative cycle only when the input voltage VI is greater than VB. Okay, so ito yung mga scenario na kailangan ulit natin i-consider. Okay, so yeah. So later on, let's try to analyze it one by one again during the VB greater than VI or VI greater than VB. Okay, so let's have this example. But before that, again, we have this scenarios or formulas when it comes to positive half cycle and then negative half cycle. So again, don't heavily rely on this one since this one still depends on your circuit. So pwedeng wala kang VB, pwedeng plus yung VB mo, and so on and so forth. But of course, during the negative half cycle, it's completely 0 volts. Okay, so anyway, let's have this example number 9. Series negative clipper with positive bias, and this one is ideal. So positive is connected to positive, and the negative is connected to the negative. So the only time that this will become a forward bias is if this one is higher than your VB. Though, I think hindi siya maapektuhan kahit na mas lesser pa yung VI natin since positive is connected to your negative and then negative is connected to your positive. So all throughout, you're not going to have a problem in here since reverse bias naman siya dito. So the only time that we'll have a reading of voltage is if we have a voltage input. Okay, kapag meron tayong, let's say, 1 volt. So as long as it's higher than your diode threshold. But yeah, ideal naman pala to kaya wala tayong diode threshold. Anyway, so in here we have a completely 5 minus 0 since ideal nga siya. And then minus 2, okay, this bias voltage resulting into a 3 volts. Okay, para lang kayo nag-Kirchhoff's law. So positive, negative, and then negative. So are we clear on how did we get this 3 volts right here? All right, and then during the negative half cycle, so negative is connected to the positive, and then positive is connected to the negative, so reverse bias. So same din, dito rin sa bias voltage natin, positive is connected to the negative, and the negative is connected to the positive. So reverse bias all throughout. Okay, so if it's reverse bias, of course, open circuit lang to. There is no flow of current on this circuit. So that is why we have 0 volts as a result in here. Okay, got it? All right. So again, if ever that you have a question, so just let me know. So let's now have a non-ideal. So ganun din. Okay, it's just that you have to add that voltage threshold. So 5 minus 0.7 minus 2. Of course, we now have a reading of 2.3 volts. So I'll give you guys 10 seconds. So same example pa rin to. It's just that this one now is non-ideal. Okay. And then for the negative cycle or negative half cycle, so negative is connected to positive. So ganun din. So reverse bias siya all throughout. So even though this one now is a silicon diode, okay, kahit na may voltage at threshold na siya dyan, though yun, naging open circuit pa rin naman. So that's why we have a reading of 0 volts. Okay, so did you guys get this one? So silence means yes. So I'll assume that one. Okay, anyway, so let's now have a negative bias. So series negative and then negative bias at the same time. So ito na yung tricky part since we now have a result in positive half cycle And then we now also have a result in negative half cycle. Okay, so again, do not heavily rely on this one. So ito by scenario pa rin lagi ito. Okay, so the same with negative half cycle. Anyway, so let's just go over with the real example para mas maintindihan natin. So in here we have positive to positive, negative to negative, and then negative to negative, and then positive to positive. So all throughout, okay, this will become a forward bias. Okay, but then again, at the end of the day, there is only one voltage source that will dominate the entire circuit. So which one? So is it the V1 or the V2? So of course, it's the V1 since 5 is greater than 2. So we have here a clockwise, okay, flow of current. So para mas maintindihan natin. Wala na naman. So all throughout, so for this V1, we have a forward bias. Okay, and then for this V2, we also have a forward bias. So all throughout, we have a close path here. Okay, and we can simply replace this one by a single line since a close path nga siya. Okay, and in here, so pwedeng ganito yung flow of current natin or pwedeng ganito. But then again, so we have to choose only one. So as you guys can see, we have V1 greater than V2. So ang magiging flow of current natin will be a clockwise. Okay. So in here, we have VO is equal to positive 5. So ito minus 0 na lang or plus 0. Well, actually dapat negative 0 to since this one is a diode. Okay, it will eat a certain amount of voltage. But since this one is ideal, so 0 na lang ilagay natin dito. And this one is positive 2. So as a result, VO is equal to 7 volts. Okay. So are we clear on the positive half cycle? Anyone who has a question so far on why did we get 7 volts? All
Wala
right.
naman po, sir.
Okay, so during the negative half cycle, so just interchange this one. So negative is connected to positive, and then positive is connected to the negative. Okay, so in here, same scenario, just like what we have on the, I think, third example, yung medyo nalito ako. Okay, let me just get this one. All right. So in here, all throughout, okay, this one will be a reverse bias since mas malaki yung VI natin or V1 greater than V2. Okay, but at some point, this will become a forward bias due to negative is connected to negative and then positive is connected to positive. Okay, so let's say at 0 volts, okay, we have a forward bias connection for this V2. Tama? Kasi this one is a DC voltage. So all throughout, of course, this one is 2 volts. But at some point, so initially, let's say sa umpisa pa lang, 0 volts pa lang to. And then of course, this will, pataas ang pataas hanggang sa maging 1 volt na to, 2 volts, 3 volts. And then let's say kapag naging 3 volts na siya, saka lang siya magiging reverse bias. But of course, mag-uumpisa tayo sa forward bias. Okay, since this one will make this diode as a forward bias. Okay, so let's say during 0 volts, the reading of the voltage is 2 volts. Okay, because we have a closed circuit in here. Okay, and yun din pala, so just a clarification. So, kapag dumaloy dito yon, okay, pwedeng dumaloy na siya all throughout and then going back right here. And then we still have the same. Okay, kasi parang confusing yung ginawa kanina. Like, dadaloy siya dito, okay, and then babalik na lang siya dito. Okay, so you can also have this kind of assumption. Okay, but then again, in here, parang, ito yung nakakalito kasi parang maneneglect na to since ang role netong V1 neto is parang wala muna. Okay, kasi nga 0 volt pa lang siya. And then pag nag 1 volt na siya, okay, so a reverse bias pa rin naman siya. Okay, since same pa rin naman yung polarity natin. It's negative to positive. Okay, and then mas mataas pa rin to, so we have one dominant voltage input only, which is the V2. So this one at let's say 1 volt siya, and then this one is still 2 volts. So ganun pa rin. At 2 volts, I mean at 1 volt of V1, ang reading pa rin natin dito is this V2 right here, which is kapag meron tayong counterclockwise, so yung outer sign yung kino-consider natin, so this one is negative. Okay. And then once this one became 2 volts, okay, this one now will become completely a reverse bias. So parang all throughout, okay, mapa 0 volts, 1 volt, 2 volts man dito sa V1, okay, ang reading pa rin natin is 2 volts, okay, for that millisecond or nanosecond. Okay, so hindi natin alam kung gaano kabilis. Alright, so that is why we have a reading of negative 2 volts for the negative half cycle. So mali itong graph ko, but this one should be right here. Negative 2 volts since negative half cycle na tayo. Okay, never mind that one. So that is why we have negative 2 volts right here. Okay. So yeah. Anyway, so we now only have